Hi, this is Elwin, author, results coach trainer, and founder of High Energy Academy. Thank you for joining me, and let's start with one very simple question. What's the one thing right now stopping you from living up to your full potential? Okay, to put it a different way, what's the one thing right now stopping you from being the very best you that you can be? Well, assuming you've taken the step of taking responsibility for your own life, which I'm sure you have if you're watching a video like this, there's really only one answer to that, right? It's you. I'm the only one stopping me from living up to my full potential. And it's the same with all of us. However, my many years of helping people to do this has let me know that there's one other factor which makes all the difference, and that's energy. In video 1, I talked through the 3 different types of energy, and if you haven't seen that yet, that would be a really great place to begin. But let me just give you a little quick reminder that with energy, anything is possible, okay? If you have enough energy, then you have clarity. Your mind works properly and you know exactly what's what. If you have energy, then you are happy. If you think back to every happy moment of your life, you'll remember that not one of them was ever one where you were low in energy or where your energy was flat, okay? It's always a high energy state. When you have high energy, you feel healthy. When you have high energy, you feel confident. When you have high energy, you feel secure and safe because you know you can handle anything life throws at you. When you have high energy, you have more fun. You have more excitement in your life because you're full of that joy, that vitality, that vim, that vigor. When you have high energy, you don't need discipline to get you through the day or to get you to do the things you know you need to do because you feel motivated, you feel inspired, you love to do those things. When you have high energy, you're successful. I've met many successful people now in my life and I've never met one who's low in energy. You need that energy to be successful. When you have high energy, you grow more, you expand, you become greater, you become more of yourself. When you have high energy, you contribute more to the world around you. Everything you touch becomes better as a result of you having been part of it. Basically, my experience, first of all helping myself and then helping thousands of other people like you is this. When you have enough energy, anything is possible. And when you don't have enough energy, everything becomes a struggle. And this is even with all the goodwill, all the good intentions, all the knowledge in the world. If you don't have the energy to act on it, if you don't have the energy to sustainably see it through, it doesn't matter. It's not worth anything. We need that energy to get the juice out of life. We need the energy to feel fully alive, and we need energy to be successful in our lives. So if high energy is so important, right? How do we get it? How do you get it? Well, in this very video, I'm going to teach you the 12 laws of high energy, right? My experience, first helping myself and then helping many thousands of other people with energy over many years, is that these 12 laws are immutable, right? They say that the only things that you can't avoid in life are death and taxes. Well, these laws are like that. These are things that you cannot get around. And a lot of them are just natural, and a lot of them are common sense. But the question is, are they common practice? Okay? And my experience is no. But before I get into going through those with you, and I'm going to do so very thoroughly, I just want to tackle a couple of other important issues, which is to understand why your energy might have got low in the first place, or actually why it might always have been low compared to other people around you. So let's have a look at the issue of why your energy might be very low in the first place. Well, if you do feel like it's been harder for you than most people around you, if either you feel that you've been more depleted than most people around you, or you've got more easily stressed and anxious than most people around you, there's a couple of really good reasons for that. Number one is that you are naturally lower in adaptive reserve energy, right? Which is the second type of energy we talked about in video 1. Now, the thing is that everyone gets a different amount of this from their parents. Some people get a lot. Some people get a small amount, some people get a medium amount, and there's not a lot you can do about it. This is just the cards that you're dealt. In the West, we would refer to this as having good genes or bad genes. Now, I'm someone who comes from bad genes in that I was very depleted and very easily stressed from a very young age. In fact, throughout most of my life, I was severely depleted in energy and struggling just to keep up. I had severe anxiety issues, which got me signed off work for a large period of time. And so it's very easy when you are in that position of being dealt a bad hand, as it were, when you get ill very easily, as I did, when you have lots of other kind of health challenges and health struggles because of that low level of adaptive reserve energy. It's very easy to feel resentful, to feel that it's not fair in some way. But there is an opportunity inside starting off with those low levels of energy. And it's this. You see, I like to draw an analogy between having low levels of reserve energy when you start life and having low levels of money. Because some people are blessed, you know, they're blessed with very high levels of reserve energy, and some people are blessed with very high levels of savings, right? They're blessed with having a trust fund or a big inheritance. Now, the question is, are those people really in a more fortunate position? Well, I would say it depends how you look at it. A lot of the time when people are born with that kind of privilege, what happens is that they never learn to earn their own, right? And they never learn to use it responsibly. And so because of that, they spend it irresponsibly and they end up broke. And when they are broke, they don't know how to earn any more because they feel entitled, right? Now, it's a similar story with energy. A lot of the time, if you start off with really high energy, you feel like you can just abuse your body, not look after yourself, not cultivate any energy. And a lot of the time, this ends up in you crashing and burning with some kind of major health issue. Now, the tragic thing is this. About 9 times out of 10, when people do get to that position of having a major health issue, and the doctor says to them, you need to change your ways, you know, you need to stop taking drugs or stop drinking alcohol or stop overworking or, you know, whatever it may be, stop eating only fried foods, whatever it may be, they don't change because they're so set in their ways, right? So if you are someone who has started off with low levels of energy, I encourage you to see that as an opportunity, as I have, okay? And to realize that it's an opportunity to learn how to cultivate your own energy, to learn how to look after yourself, to learn how to make the best of what you do have available to you, because then actually you end up in the same position where I'm in now, and I'm only in my early 30s, and I'm already in a more fortunate position than most people in their early 30s who had more energy than me, because I've learned to cultivate it. And as a result of that, I actually have more of an abundance of it. So even if you do start off in that position of having had major health challenges, major stress and anxiety issues, or major depletion issues, or any combination of those, don't think that it's the end of the world, and don't think that it's something that you're stuck with. My experience for myself and helping many other people is that it's absolutely possible to get that energy back again. Now, factor number 2, which I see a lot as well with people who are very depleted in energy and very high in stress and who have major health challenges, is trauma, okay? And the definition of trauma is really anything which you hold in your body as a trauma, right? So there's no good saying to yourself, oh, well, I know someone else, or I know other people are gone through way, way worse, and so what I went through doesn't count, okay? On the other hand, there's no point trying to convince yourself that you're traumatized if you're not, you know? If you did have something really awful happen to you, but you genuinely feel good in your body and you feel okay about it, then sometimes that's just the way it works too, right? But if you do have a trauma, it gets stuck in your body, and it gets stuck in the form of chronic muscular tension. And so often I found that those people who are very depleted in energy have that combination of, yes, being born with low reserves, but also having been through some kind of trauma and being stuck with this chronic muscular tension, a complete inability to fully relax, an inability to just be, an inability to just be present. And believe me, I'm not criticizing or pointing the finger here. I was in exactly that position as well. You know, very early in my life, I had been traumatized. Of course, you know, it could have been worse for me too, but as it was, I had a father who was violent towards me at a very young age. Before I can even remember, you know, when I was still a baby, a few months old, all the way up to when I was a teenager and finally stood up for myself and got him to stop. And I had a mother who loved me very much, so that was awesome. But even in her case, she once accidentally fed me some pure bleach. in a little sippy cup with a little tiny hole in, so I couldn't smell it, and I just glugged a whole cup of it, and had to be rushed to hospital to have my stomach pumped. And they only just got the bleach out in time, and I almost died with that. So there are a couple of instances where I almost died with violence and with being poisoned, and I held this as trauma in my body. And I used to be so tight and so guarded and always on edge, and never able to fully relax and never able to just be. And this is something that's so chronically depleting and draining in the body's energy as well. So a lot of the time, in fact, when people come to me for high energy, but if they're very, very depleted in energy, the first thing we actually need to do is teach them how to relax. And then once they're able to relax, the energy starts to be able to flow through them. Because that chronic tension is like blockages in the flow of energy for your body. If that's a little bit too mystical and Eastern for you, then we could say it blocks the circulation throughout your body. It blocks the ability for nutrients to go into cells and go out of cells. And so because of that, things do not flow. And so because of that, you become in a more and more stuck and depleted state. Now, both of those are factors that you really can't do very much about in terms of if it's happened, right? You're either born that way, and traumas, it's normally the ones that are early in life that have the biggest impact on us, although major traumas later in life can make a shift as well. Another factor that I found, which is very draining in energy, which is particular just to women, is childbirth, right? Pregnancy and childbirth. Because it takes up a huge amount of the body's energy, because when you're a mother, you're literally taking some of your energy, some of your life force, some of your nutrients, and using it to create another life. It's very draining and very depleting as well. And I often have women come to me who are like, I don't understand it. I was just great. I was full of energy and getting on with life. And then suddenly I had the baby. And of course, you know, that was depleting. And then there was all the staying up and hardly sleeping. And of course I was tired then. But now she sleeps throughout the night, or he sleeps throughout the night. And I'm still drained. I'm still depleted. So that's the third most common reason that I find why someone can end up very depleted in energy. Doing this is a little bit like the equivalent of earning $2,000 a month, but spending $4,000 a month. And so where does the other $2,000 come from? Well, you put it on the credit card. But the problem is that's more and more and more debt. And sooner or later, that debt comes to get you, right? In the form of anxiety, in terms of debt collectors showing up, or in the form of depletion, in terms of bankruptcy, right? And in fact, that's exactly how a debt, a reserve energy, does show up in your life normally. You either get super anxious and super stressed about everything all the time, or you just collapse and become completely exhausted. And both of those situations are, of course, highly avoidable. However, I don't think it's a really good idea to focus on not doing things. What's important is to start doing the things that serve you. So I'm not telling you not to drink coffee or to take stimulants. I'm just letting you know the truth of the situation and really leaving the choice up to you. Now, let me just address one more myth which I come across a lot, and that's the myth of being busy and dealing with urgencies versus being truly productive, okay? A lot of the time, especially when you are on that adrenal cycle of just pushing yourself harder and harder and often using stimulants, but not necessarily to keep pushing yourself, why do we do it? It's because we convince ourselves that we have so much to do, right? We're so busy. And I know what you mean. I'm busy too. I've got a lot to do. I'm running multiple businesses. I've got family, I've got friends, I've got a life, you know. So I understand where you're coming from. We all have a lot to do. However, a lot of the time we get caught up in doing busy work and reacting to things that aren't really important instead of being truly productive. You see, all the experts on productivity, all the incredibly successful people that I studied on the area of productivity say the same thing. True productivity comes from having a great deal of clarity on what's what, really getting on with it, obviously, but also having frequent breaks, having frequent periods where we relax, recover, rejuvenate, where we restore ourselves. And that's not where most people are at. Most people are in the position, and you may be able to identify with this. I know I certainly was in this position of just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And that's where we use stimulants a lot of times to just keep ourselves going for a little bit more. Keep ourselves going for a little bit more. But it's not necessarily stimulants. Sometimes we do it with urgencies, you know. Sometimes we do it with distractions, you know, like checking the phone and looking at emails every couple of minutes as if, you know, that's super important. Or every time the phone rings, you have to pick it up immediately, right? Or whatever the equivalent is. Maybe like me, you've chosen a job where you have constant urgency to continually give you adrenal rush. And really, that does the same thing for you as taking stimulants. I used to work as a chef in a very busy restaurant, and so there'd constantly be new orders coming through, and they constantly had to be completed to a very high standard within just a few minutes. So I always had that urgency. And how am I going to keep up with that? Doing that maybe 8-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, right? Maybe sometimes finishing at midnight or 1 in the morning and starting again at 7 or 8 in the morning. How can I possibly keep myself going? Again, it's by dipping into my reserves, okay? And that's the cycle that a lot of us are on. Now, if you're watching something like this, I imagine that success is important for you, right? I mean, why else are we looking to be productive? It's either because we're just trying to get by, or because we're trying to get by and be successful in the world, right? Well, true success doesn't come from just pushing yourself harder and harder and harder. True success comes from taking a step back, making a plan for your life, right? Focusing on what's truly important, dealing with those things that are important and not urgent, and to a large degree, ignoring those things which are urgent and not important, right? And when we take that mindset, then we don't need to keep pushing ourselves. Now, a lot of the reason why we get into that habit of just pushing and pushing is because we believe that if we ever stopped, we would completely collapse. And to a certain degree, there is some truth to that. When we're in an adrenal cycle, we feel like fear of stopping. But the truth is also this, that adrenal cycle is not sustainable. At some point, you're going to need to get off it. Now, are you going to get off the adrenal cycle of stress and urgency through collapse or breakdown? Or are you going to get off there because you're going to make an intelligent decision? Well, I encourage you to make an intelligent decision right here, right now, to get off that cycle and to get on the cycle of committing to practicing the 12 laws of high energy living. There are 12 laws, and I'm going to go through all of them in this video because I don't want you to feel like I'm holding anything back. However, the truth is that there is a lot to practice. This is a whole other way of life. And for that reason, in fact, in the High Energy Academy online course, we just go through one of these per week. So you have plenty of time to integrate it into your life. But I'm going to go through all of them with you one at a time now. And I'm going to give you just one quick practical tip to go with each one so you can start acting on it immediately to get results. So you know this is something that actually works. Now, there's also a printout along with this video just underneath, which you can download and print out. And this will be a step-by-step reminder of each of the 12 laws in a nutshell, in just a couple of sentences, and a quick tip, a little action step as to what you can do to put that law into action straight away, which I highly encourage you to use and I highly encourage you to follow along with. Okay, are you ready to have the keys to a high energy lifestyle revealed to you? Okay, you're still watching, I'm going to assume that's a yes. So let's go for it. Now, law number 1 is to be present, or more particularly, practice presence. Okay, what does it mean to be present? To be present means to have your attention, to have your focus pointed at right here, right now. Okay, not in the past, not in the potential future, not in your fantasies and daydreams, not in your thoughts, not listening to the voice in your head, yammer on and on, but to actually be aware of what's going on around you. So your 5 senses right here, right now. Okay, like what do you see right now? What do you hear right now? What do you smell, touch, and taste right now? Okay, that's presence. Now, presence is something that's been talked about for thousands of years in the more esoteric, spiritual kind of schools of thought, but it's something that recent neuroscience has absolutely proven to be a tangible quality, something that's measurable, and something that's fantastically beneficial for a person's quality of life, for their health, for their mental health, for their emotional health, for everything. The more present you are, the higher quality of life you're going to have. It's a much better indicator than anything else. It's a much better indicator than an absence of disease, or the amount of money you have, or even the amount of relationships that you have in your life. The amount that you're able to be present is absolutely key, okay? Now, how do we get that level of presence? If you are familiar with personal development and spiritual kind of stuff, you may be familiar with the work of Eckhart Tolle, right? Power of Now and A New Earth, and they are excellent books, great works explaining all the very many virtues of being present, but from my perspective, not a lot of practical guidance on how to do it. So as far as I'm concerned, there is one simple way to become more present, and it's to learn to breathe from the belly and not the chest, okay? So the first thing is just to be aware of your breathing at all, because the great thing about breathing is it's going on right here, right now, okay? So right here, right now, just become aware of your body and become aware of your breath and become aware of where you're breathing from, okay? And I'll just demonstrate again. I demonstrated in more detail in the last video, but if a person is breathing from the chest, they will tend to breathe like this, and this is what you'll see. See, the chest goes out, the shoulders go up, that's normal. Now, this is what happens if you breathe from the belly. And you'll notice as I do this, my shoulders and my chest don't move at all. That's just breathing from the belly. And of course you can breathe from both as well. And if you're very advanced, there's more, you can breathe to the side of the lungs and into the back and stuff like that. But those are the two basic ways. Now, what happens when you breathe from the chest? When you breathe from the chest, you're only using 1/3 of your total lung capacity. So you're going to be oxygen depleted most of the time. And lack of oxygen is one of the biggest reasons for lack of energy. So that's another knock-on benefit of learning to breathe from the belly. So I would highly encourage you to see presence as a practice rather than just something that you are or are not. If you're thinking right now, oh, well, I'm not present, Owen. Well, it's not a thing that you are or are not. It's simply a thing that you do. And I would encourage you to see that every moment that you are aware of right here, right now, is a success. It's like a point. And every moment that you are not is like losing a point, right? So it's just about accumulating more points by being more and more present, by doing more and more presence. And you do that by stopping, becoming aware of the world around you, taking a deep breath in with your belly going out. You can use your hands on your belly to just guide that if you want. So just stop, breathe in, become aware, and then breathe out slowly while staying aware of the world around you. And that's it. That only needs to take 5 seconds of your day. But the very best thing to do would be to commit to practicing regularly. So some clients of mine commit to doing it once before every meal to get present before they eat, which is a fantastic practice to get into. I would at least recommend that you do it every morning before you face the day. And ideally, I would recommend that you do it every hour or so. Some of my more committed clients, they just set a little timer on their phone, so every hour it'll be beep beep, and then they're all stressed at work, you know, on the keyboard or whatever, like beep beep, oh yeah, and then stop, sit up, right, straight back, take a breath in, become aware of the world around you, breathe out slowly, and life is immediately better. It's that simple. You see, the truth is this. On one hand, our quality of life is better now than it has ever been. You know, we have, in the developed world at least, we have immediate access to food, we have more freedom of expression than ever before, we have a higher quality of living based on all the kind of measurable indices than ever before. We have access to clean running water, electricity. You know, it's just, we have the most immense abundance of possibilities and the most immense abundance of comforts and conveniences in our life, more than ever before. And yet, we're also more stressed and depleted than ever before. Why is that? Well, some factors are environmental, which we'll go into next, but one of the other factors is that we have more and more input, which is stress-inducing than ever before. So while the amount of real threat in our lives is less than ever before, the amount of threat and drama that we're exposed to in the form of media and in form of other people, in terms of not real threat, but in terms of imagined threat, is higher than ever before. And I'm talking about things like the news, I'm talking about things like TV shows, I'm talking about the internet, and we're in a state where our threat response, our sympathetic nervous system, our adrenal glands are constantly being fired off, but it's almost always for things that are not really real, through virtual things, like I say, for either what's on the TV screen or on the computer screen or on the screen inside our own head. So such a simple way to reduce stress and increase energy is to stop focusing on any of those screens, whether it's the internal ones or the TV or the iPhone or whatever, and start focusing on the world, the real world. And when we just stop and point our attention at the real world out there, we find that about 98% of the time in the developed world, there's nothing to be stressed about. There's nothing to be scared of. There's nothing to be worried about. It's just pretty chilled. It's pretty calm, and it's okay. Okay, so law 2 of living a high energy and in fact successful life is to learn to focus on the results. So assuming that we're not focusing on the world around us and that we are in our head, what are we going to be focusing on? Well, there are 3 broad categories of areas of life that you can choose or that you will automatically focus on. But even if you automatically do it, you can always choose to, right? You can always make a choice to automatically focus on something else. So the first thing that you can focus on is the problems, right? The challenges, the pain, the struggle, whatever. The challenge with that is if you do that, you will feel like a victim a lot of the time. You'll feel helpless, you'll feel scared, you'll feel bad, you'll feel depressed, you'll feel apathetic, you'll feel cynical. Not the best option, right? And if you're watching a video like this again, I doubt you do that much of that. Or you at least only do it some of the time. And by the way, not judging here because I spent the first 25 years of my life pretty much focused on that 90% of the time. So I know what kind of hellish internal state that creates, and I think that you know that that doesn't serve you too. However, you may not have that great an alternative, because the other thing that most people focus on when they're doing their best is to focus on the to-dos, right? What they do want to do. Like, so the to-do list. And I call this focusing on the process, okay? Now the challenge with that is if you're only ever focusing on what to do, you feel more and more stressed, because the more, whatever you focus on, you see more of, right? You magnify. Whatever you focus on, you magnify. So if you focus on the problem, you get more problems. Well, if you focus on the process, what do you get more of? Process, right? And the more things you have to do, the more stressed you get. And it's a vicious cycle again. And while this one often leads to depression and apathy, this one leads to stress and exhaustion. So what's the third option? The third option is to focus on results, to focus on the results that you are wanting to achieve and the results that you have already got, okay? The outcomes. So an example of this might be, let's say for something really mundane that all of us have to face, like cleaning the house, you know? There are 3 basic ways we can look at that. Oh my God, the house is filthy, it's disgusting. Ugh, right? How's that gonna make you feel? Probably disgusting, right? Doesn't serve you very much. Or, oh my God, I need to clean the house. Okay, I've got to do this, I've got to hoover, I've got to tidy, I've got to do the washing, da da da. How's that going to make you feel? Well, probably stressed, right? Or this one. I want to have an awesome clean house. I'm going to have a clean kitchen, clean floors, clean clothes, right? And then every time you do one, it's like tick, cleaned all my clothes, done all the washing up, cleaned all the floors, and you feel more and more successful as you go through the list, okay? Now, it's the same for something as mundane as that, or something as fantastic as creating a whole new life for yourself, you know? It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to, do all kinds of things which are unfamiliar to me and step outside my comfort zone and learn to do things which are new and meet new people. Oh, how scary, how difficult, right? That's one possibility. Or there's like, okay, I'm kind of looking forward to all that, but there's all these steps that I have to take, and I've got to do this differently, and I've got to do that differently, and I've got to succeed, and I've got to overcome this, and that's kind of stressful, right? Or there's like, wow, I'm going to have an amazing relationship. I'm going to have an amazing new home. I'm going to have an amazing new career. I'm going to have amazing new friends. I'm going to have You see how much more exciting that is, right? So all we need to do is take our focus away from the problem, because that depresses us, away from the to-do list, because that stresses us, and on to the results, because that makes us feel inspired. That makes us feel successful every time we get one. So the simple practical tip with this is this. When you face the day, or when you're preparing for the next day, the night before, instead of writing in your head or on a computer or on a piece of paper your list of to-dos, write your list of outcomes, your achievements. That may just be a matter of wording the same thing, right? In a slightly different way. So rather than clean house, it might be have clean house, right? But the feeling of it is very different, right? And what you do with it when you succeed is also different, right? If you say clean house, just cross it out, that's just one less thing to do. And what's left? Loads of things to do still, right? More stress. But what about instead of you put a nice little tick next to it? You're like, yes, successful. And what about if you just celebrate it for a bit? Wow, I have a clean house. Awesome. Wow, I have a new career. Awesome. Wow, I successfully cooked dinner. Awesome. Wow, I picked up the kids from school on time today. Awesome. Whatever it is, right? Celebrate your success. Acknowledge that you've been successful. Celebrate your success. Don't just cross it off. Okay, law number 3 for high energy living is you must listen to your emotions. Listen to your emotions, okay? Emotions are there for a reason. I remember back when I was, particularly in my late teenage years, I'd become so emotionally shut down, so disassociated, as a psychiatrist or psychologist might call it, that my life was just grey. My life was bland. Life felt so meaningless, so dull, so empty. And really that's because I was completely repressing and ignoring and not acknowledging any of my emotions. Now, thank God I managed to get out of that state, right? And the lesson, the takeaway that I got from that, which I found is so important for so many people with low energy, is to start to become aware of your emotions, right? Because first of all, without emotions, life is meaningless, okay? Without emotions, life is black and white. Emotions give life color. Emotions give them depth. Emotion gives them perspective, variety, okay? Without them, you would just be an automaton. Without them, you would just be a robot. So let's first of all acknowledge how important emotions are. I made a commitment to myself, which I'd highly encourage you to do, that I would rather have extreme emotional pain than I would have numbness, you know? A lot of emotional pain is very, very painful, especially if you've been through earlier trauma. But there is nothing worse than being numb. And I'm absolutely convinced of that. And if I do nothing for you except for to wake you up to that reality, I'll feel I've done more than enough. There's nothing worse than numbness. So it's really important to feel fully alive. And that's what emotions are for. And then with that realization, it's time to just start paying attention to how you feel. And this advice is especially for men, by the way. Just checking in and saying, how do I feel right now? How do I feel by now? And there's something about naming your emotions which is really important. In terms of brain mapping, what we've discovered is that when we name our emotions, it activates more the left neocortex, which makes us feel more action-orientated, more empowered, more capable, more positive, more optimistic. While if we just have these emotions and we don't name them and we don't clarify them to ourselves, we're stuck more in the right neofrontal cortex, which is related more to feeling depressed and feeling passive and feeling in a victim-like state. So it's very important to be aware of the emotions and then actually name them. Okay, so my practical advice for you is that throughout the day, and you can do this at the same time as you do your breathing practice, say before meals, just ask yourself, or even every hour if you're very committed, just ask yourself, how do I feel right now? You know, like if I were to check in on myself, how do I feel right now? I feel very inspired, you know, to share this message with you. That's one emotion. I feel very grateful that you're taking the opportunity to listen to this with me. I feel very purposeful, like it's really important to me. I really care that this message gets across to you, you know? So that's me checking in on my feelings right here, right now, spontaneously, by the way. Didn't have that prepared. So you can do the same thing. And the more that you do it, the more that you'll get yourself into an empowered, energized state. and away from any kind of victim, apathetic kind of state. Okay, law 4 of a high energy life is, law 4 is to make decisions and take action. But wait, isn't that two things? Well, I would really tie them together as being only one thing. I would suggest to you that if you are making a decision without taking some kind of action on it immediately or as soon as possible, it's not a real decision at all. It's just another thought. Decisions are really where thought meets action. And decisions for a lot of people are scary. Decisions are where you take the world of infinite possibility that's in front of you and narrow it down and say no to infinity minus one, basically. You say no to everything but one option. Now, that sounds very limiting and it sounds like, oh my God, what if I get it wrong? But the truth is, if you don't make that decision to limit yourself to one option and just go for it and try it and take action and see what happens, you are procrastinating. And procrastinating is very draining to your body's energy, okay? It makes you feel more and more depleted, especially when there's an important decision to make that you know needs making. For myself, throughout most of my life, I drained myself massively through the amount of procrastination I had, through all kinds of things, whether it was reaching out to someone that I felt a connection with, or whether it was paying bills, or whether it was going to the gym, or whether it was finding out what I needed to find out in order to advance myself in my career. All of these things I procrastinated about badly because I was afraid that I would make the wrong decision. But the truth is, the worst decision of all, in almost all cases, is no decision, right? Because what we need to get out of this is the mentality that there is such a thing as failure. To me, now, the only failure is not doing anything, not learning anything, right? And the only success, basically, if you make a decision and it works perfectly, congratulations, you're successful. If you make a decision and it doesn't work, congratulations, you just learned what didn't work, right? There's the famous story of Thomas Edison, who, rather than procrastinating and making the electric light bulb, made about 10,000 attempts before he finally found the right thing that worked. And, you can understand, at number 6,331, someone asked him and said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? No one's ever done this before. It's ridiculous. It's never going to work. Don't you feel like you're failing? And he said, I'm not failing. I just found one more way that doesn't work, right? The great news is, especially if you have high levels of energy, you're not going to need to fail 10,000 times before you succeed, right? You're not going to need to have all those learning experiences in almost every instance. Especially when you're on a roll, especially when you shift more into the left side, you're focusing on results, you're being present, you will be successful pretty easily and pretty quickly. But you have to make the decision to take action and just do something. So my practical tip for this law for you is that every day, once a day, just ask yourself, what am I procrastinating about? What decision am I delaying? And then when you've identified what it is, just make a decision. If you don't know what to do, flip a coin, right? Because you know what? If you flip that coin and it tells you exactly the wrong thing, you'll feel this feeling inside your heart or inside your gut, like, oh, I didn't want that one. And then you know it was the other one. So either way, you know, okay? So just make a decision, do what's necessary, and take action. Now, with law number 5 of high energy living, we're moving away from focusing more just on the brain, and we're starting to focus on the rest of the body. And law number 5 is to oxygenate. Most of us are living in a chronically oxygen deprived state, and this is cataclysmically detrimental to our energy. As I explained in video number 1, when we have a unit of glucose, a unit of sugar, a unit of food, and we have no energy to turn that into cellular energy, to turn that into ATP. We only get 2 units of energy from 1 unit of glucose. When we are in an aerobic state, meaning that our body has an abundance of oxygen to turn that unit of fuel, that unit of sugar into energy, we can get up to 38 units of ATP, of cellular energy, from that 1 unit of sugar. So I think it's true to say, even though Western science doesn't frame it this way, that we get 19 times as much energy, or that only 1/19 of our total energy comes from food. The other 18/19 actually come from oxygen. They actually come from the air we breathe. Now, one important distinction for the air, the way that we breathe, is to breathe from the belly, which we talked about in Law 1, right? But another thing which is really important, and here's my practical tip, is you must do aerobic exercise. And this increases your body's ability to extract oxygen from energy, from breathing, to turn into energy, okay? Now, aerobic exercise varies massively depending on what position you're in. You know, if you are used to being very sedentary and even walking down the road gets you out of breath, then it's going to be very different from if you are already very fit and doing a lot of exercise. So what does it mean? On a very simple level, aerobic exercise is where you take about 30 to 45 minutes, 3 days a week, minimum, up to 5 days a week, doing something which raises your heart rate, makes you feel hot, makes you feel maybe a little bit sweaty, makes you breathe more fully, but not to the point where you can't speak, okay? So that's the very simple way of being able to tell that you're exercising aerobically. If you are pushing yourself, but you're still able to talk comfortably, then you're in the right kind of aerobic range. Now, as I say, for you, that may just be walking gently down the street, or for you, that may be cycling very hard down the street, but whatever that may be. Now, if the idea of even walking gently for 30 minutes is too much for you, that's okay too. The idea with this is not to go extreme, but to do it step by step, you know? I've worked with many people, even with chronic fatigue, who can barely get out of bed, and I understand that, you know, we're all at a different level. But wherever you're at, it's important to start moving at least, and to start exercising those lungs. So if 8 minutes of walking exhausts you, I recommend starting with about 4, you know? And then the next day, do maybe 4.5. And then the next day, do 5. And just build it up really gradually, right? And by the time you can walk comfortably for 30 to 45 minutes without feeling like you're pushing yourself, then you would increase it again. And maybe then you would walk briskly, right? For that amount of time. And when that's too easy, then you might start to jog, for instance, right? So we just keep, first of all, increasing the time, and then we increase the amount of exertion to keep yourself in that aerobic range, which has so many benefits, okay? The truth is that we as human beings are built and we're designed to move, okay? Not to be sedentary. Throughout most of our evolution, we didn't have any choice but to move because we had stuff to do. It's only very recently with modern technology we have the option of not moving. However, that doesn't mean that not moving is a good idea. And in fact, not moving is one of the most draining things in our energy that we can possibly do. So to get back into the habit of moving at least that much, to do 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week of moderate aerobic exercise has been proven to help with depression, it's been proven to help with all kinds of health challenges, and it's proven to help with making you feel more energized, more positive, more inspired, and more successful. And by the way, where do you think is the most important place to breathe from when you're doing aerobic exercise? And the answer, of course, is from the belly, not from the chest. And that may feel a little bit unusual, unnatural to begin with. It may feel more natural because you're used to it to breathe from the chest, but you'll get far better results if you breathe from the belly, even when, and especially when, you're doing your aerobic exercise. Okay, so that's practical tip number 5. Law number 6. Okay, law number 6 is to always be hydrating. Okay, most people are chronically dehydrated, and it's a major drain of energy. There are lots of really complex reasons for it, but I'll sum it up because it's really also as simple as this. Your cells need to have nutrients going in, and they need to have waste going out. And when you don't have enough water in your system to accomplish that, your cells start to stagnate. They get blocked. They don't have the energy they need, and they can't get the waste out. So what do we need to do? We need to hydrate more and dehydrate less, okay? So to hydrate more basically means to drink more good quality water, and to generally at least avoid things which are dehydrating as much as possible, especially caffeine, alcohol, and sugar, which are all dehydrating, right? Now, a good amount of water to drink if you're living a fairly sedentary passive lifestyle, and if you're of average weight, which is about 70 kilos, 160 pounds, something like that, is about 2 liters, for Americans, 2 quarts a day. That's a good amount to have. If you're very, very, very active, it can be way more than that. Personally, I have a lot more than that. I have at least double that. If you're very, very sedentary, which you're not going to be if you're living a high energy lifestyle, it may even be a little bit less. Now, for some people, that may actually feel like a lot of water, like, oh my God. There are a couple of good reasons for that. First of all, if you're only drinking poor quality water, it's understandable that a part of you is like, ugh, I don't want to drink that. Depending on a lot on what area you're in, tap water in general is pretty poor and has often some pretty toxic substances in it. So I'd highly recommend not going for that. I personally prefer to consume spring water, but some well-filtered water would be good too. When I say well-filtered, I mean using a high-quality filter, not just a very cheap filter, like a Brita filter, something like that, like a high-quality, say, reverse osmosis filter, something like that. So to use filtered water or to use spring water, if you limit your water to only drinking those, you'll find that your body naturally is a lot more happy with and happy to go along with your desire to drink more water. It's not going to recoil at the idea. The other potential reason why you may resist drinking water is because you're low in electrolytes, especially salt, okay? We have this idea in our modern, recent world that salt is bad for us. And this is true of modern salt, which is highly processed salt, which is where the salt is heated so that all minerals other than sodium chloride are destroyed, and it then has some anti-caking agents added in, which are pretty toxic as well. And what you're left with is a dead salt, which is actually not good for the body, which raises blood pressure and which has all those negative qualities associated to it. But real salt, which is either rock salt, like Himalayan rock salt, or sea salt, unheated sea salt, which tends to be a little bit damp and have a little bit of an off color, usually a little bit of a gray color. That's real salt, okay? And my experience has been that generally the more depleted of energy people are, the more salt they need. I've had many people with severe chronic fatigue who need several teaspoons or even tablespoons a day, and then they miraculously start feeling better. So my perspective on salt is this: the correct amount to have of the good quality is the amount that makes you feel like drinking the right amount of water, right? So if you're living an averagely sedentary lifestyle, then maybe someone my size, maybe 2 liters of water, right? If you're bigger, more. If you're smaller, less. If you don't feel like drinking that, if you only feel like drinking 1 liter a day, you probably need to have some more salt, right? Because everyone knows if you have too much salt, it leaves you feeling too thirsty, right? Well, how about making that work for you? You don't want to be too thirsty, obviously, but you want to be just thirsty enough. So that's the way to make yourself the right amount of thirsty to drink the right amount of water. Now, here's my practical tip. The most important time to have water is first thing in the morning, okay? First thing in the morning, like literally before almost anything other than maybe using the toilet. And the amount that we want to have, again, depending on your size, but if you're my kind of size, I recommend a pint to ideally a liter of water first thing. And that's before you do anything else, before you drink anything else, and before you eat anything else, okay? So if you're used to starting the day with, say, coffee, then that's fine. You can carry on having the coffee. All I'm recommending is to have the liter of water first. And who knows, you might actually find you don't need the coffee, because it's not that water is energizing per se, it's just that dehydration is so de-energizing, right? Obviously, if your cells can't get nutrients and they can't get rid of waste, you're gonna feel lower and lower and lower in energy, right? So drinking that water is hugely important. Now, why first thing in the morning? Well, I especially recommend doing it then because that is when you're the most dehydrated, first of all. You've been asleep for, maybe 8 hours, right? So you need to replenish and replace that. And you also, during the night, throughout the night, your body's been going through a cleansing cycle. Now you notice this because your bowel movement is probably first thing in the morning, right? Or near first thing in the morning. When you wake up, you probably have more of a coating on your tongue. Your breath probably smells worse than it does at any other time of day, right? Well, that's because throughout the night, your digestive tract, your body's been doing a cleansing cycle, and your digestive tract becomes coated in waste, right? Now, what we don't want to do when our digestive tract is coated in waste is pour food on top of it, or even a liquid food like coffee or juice or something like that. We want to flush that waste through, because otherwise we are redigesting that waste. Now, law number 7 is to always be building your reserves, okay? And there are 2 particular type of reserves I want to talk to you about today. Number 1 is your reserves of minerals, okay, especially alkaline minerals. And number 2 is your reserves of sleep. Both of which are part of the reason why, even though we have a better lifestyle on paper than ever before, we are actually feeling worse than ever before, because we are lower on both of those. I remember seeing a very interesting article from 1936, a document from the US Department of Agriculture warning that soil was now so depleted that we could expect large amounts of degenerative diseases in people because of the amount of depletion in soil, because people need minerals to live. People's bodies need minerals to function, and they just weren't getting those minerals anymore. Well, that was 1936. Do you think it's got better since then? Hell no, it's got worse, right? It's got significantly worse. This basically all occurred when the big industry first discovered that while there are 92 minerals which are essential for human health, there are only 3 necessary to make plants grow, and therefore the plants to feed animals as well, right? So the animals are only as good as the plants that they're eating. So there are only 3 minerals needed in order to make plants grow, and yet there's 92 needed for human health. What about the other 89? Well, waste of money, right? As long as we can get the plants to be big and we can sell them and make money, that's all that matters, right? Well, from a making money perspective, yes, but not from a you and I being healthy perspective. So this is one of the reasons why we've become more and more depleted, is because our food, whether it's plants or whether it's the animals eating the plants, has become more and more demineralized. So it's really important to consume those minerals that we're lacking in our normal food. Now, where can we still get those high levels of minerals in our food? Well, we can get it from wild foods. We can get it from certain foods which are famous for having high levels of certain minerals. But the simplest category and the simplest way to look at it, I think, is sea vegetables, right? Sea foods in general. Sea vegetables are not low in these particular type of minerals. In fact, they are abundantly high. In fact, 1 teaspoon of powdered kelp contains as much mineralization as the average meal, in fact, the average day's worth of meals that most people eat. It's so incredibly densely packed in minerals. So I highly recommend to supplement your diet either with a teaspoon of kelp a day, or you can get a supplement version which kind of makes it tastier, because kelp doesn't taste particularly good, to be honest. I use a supplement called Daily Multiple, which is just an extract of a dozen or so different types of seaweeds, and it contains high levels of most vitamins and minerals, all in one simple, delicious capful of berry tasting liquid, right? So that's a very simple way of mineralizing myself and helping to make myself more mineralized. Now, if you're wondering how you can tell how mineralized you are, a simple way is just looking at your fingernails. The more that your fingernails are generally healthy, the more that you have good levels of minerals. If they break very easily, that's a sign that you're low in minerals. If they have lines going either vertically or horizontally across, that's a sign that they're low in minerals. If they have vertical lines, it's a sign of stress as well, particularly. And if you have the half moons at the base of each of your nails, right, then that's a sign that you have fairly high levels of mineralization still. If you have the half moons only on some of your nails, that's a sign that you're kind of in between. And if you have only minimal half moons on any of them, even the thumbs, that's a sign that your mineralization is very low. But here's the thing, even if you have very high, and of course those are only general indicators, there's always a little bit of exceptions to that kind of rule, but it's a good way to start off. And of course you can get a full mineral analysis as well if you want to go in depth and find out exactly what's going on for certain, right? Now, other than mineralization, there's another really important, crucial factor, and that's sleep, okay? Now again, if you're a successful, personal development orientated person, you're probably into being productive, being the best you can be, and you probably look at sleep as a waste of time, right? In fact, that mentality has really been put into us for the last couple of hundred years or so, since the industrial age, where it's all about constant production. And as I revealed before with success, a lot of the time that comes from replenishment and recovery and recuperation, rejuvenation. You know, if you are doing the kind of career where your success is dependent on your knowledge or on your ideas or on your creativity, which more and more of us are in the developed world, again, we find that all the best insights and all the best distinction comes to us not when we are slaving away, but when we actually allow ourselves to have a break, when we actually allow ourselves to recover, right? So research on the brain has proven that the optimal amount of sleep to have for the human brain is 7 to 8 hours a night on average. And if you think that you're doing great on just 4 or just 5 or even just 6, you're wrong. I hate to say it, right? You may be doing great compared to most people because you may be doing lots of other things right, or you may have high levels of reserves and therefore you have that going for you, but it's to your detriment that you're not getting enough sleep, okay? You'd be better off getting 7 to 8 hours a night on average. Now, I realize everyone is different and it depends on the seasons as well, right? And the time of your life, and when you're a teenager and a baby, you generally tend to need to sleep more. When you're more elderly, you tend to need to sleep less. So I understand that there are variations there, but generally 7 or 8 hours a night, not 4, 5 or 6, is what's really going to serve you to live a high energy lifestyle. And if you feel like you're just too busy for that, or you just have too much to do that, I would suggest to you that the more that you sleep and recover, the more clarity you're going to have, and the more you're going to be able to get more done in less time. That's absolutely been my experience. Rather than racing around doing things which are urgent and not important, you'll have more clarity, you'll have more of the harmonic energy, which we talked about in video 1, and everything will function better. Your immune system will function better, and you'll feel those deep level reserves start to be replenished, which gives you that confidence, which gives you that will, which gives you that drive, and that gives you that inspiration, which you don't have when you feel like you're just running on empty. The one last type of reserves I'm going to mention here, just as a bonus, is your level of omega-3s, okay? Omega-3 is a type of fat which is essential for the health of your brain, especially. In terms of supplements, a lot of them you kind of can't tell if you've had them or not. But in terms of omega-3, when you have high levels of omega-3 supplementation and you're deficient in them, like many, many people are, you actually feel immediately the boost in memory. You feel that mental clarity. You feel that ability to focus increasing. It's really quite remarkable. Again, throughout most of our history, we had no need to supplement it because there was an abundance in the foods that we ate naturally. But in our modern day life, we have far less access to omega-6, and we have far less access to omega-3 fats and far more access to omega-6, which is unbalanced because we want a balance of those two. So we need to add some omega-3 to balance. So you can either do that by having oily fish several times a week, things like salmon, sardines, trout, those kind of things, or you can supplement. If you are a vegan, you can supplement with something called marine phytoplankton. And don't worry, all this will be in your sheet, so you don't have to write it down now and go, how do you spell that? And if you are not a vegan, then you can go for krill oil, which is both of which are very concentrated forms of a very highly bioavailable, which means easy for your body to use, easy to go straight into your brain, form of omega-3, which is, as I say, excellent for your brain as well as probably every other function of your body as well. Every single cell of your body needs it. So those are the 3 type of reserves I would encourage you to go for, right? Mineralize with some kelp or some daily multiple. Get enough sleep, right? Don't kid yourself, 7 or 8 hours a night. And go for some omega-3 containing fish or some omega-3 containing supplement. Now, law number 8 to living a high energy life is to reconnect with nature's battery recharges, right? And these are things that we don't naturally think about because up until a few hundred years ago, evolutionarily, we had absolutely no choice but to do what I'm about to recommend. And so it was just like, well, duh, of course. It's only recently, in the last couple of hundred years, that we've had the option of not doing these at all. And many of us are not connecting with nature's battery recharges. And as a result, we're becoming more and more depleted, and we don't understand why, right? Our natural inclination is to think if we're low in energy, to focus on food, right? If we're feeling bad in any way, in fact, to focus on food. Like food is going to be the thing that gives us what we need. And this made sense throughout most of our evolution because food was scarce and the other battery recharges were abundant. And now it's the exact other way around. We have an abundance of food, but those natural recharges are scarce. Now, what are those natural recharges that I'm talking about? They are very simply contact with the earth, the sun, and fresh air, okay? All of these are really important. And while it's kind of common sense, we all know that someone who lives outside and who works outside and who spends a lot of time outside, all other factors being equal, have a lot more energy and have a lot more vitality than people who don't, you know? That's kind of obvious. We have this mentality of someone who's just, you know, at home, curtains drawn behind a screen all day, they're going to be pasty, they're going to be weak, right? Or on the other hand, someone working outside on the fields or whatever, they're going to be strong, they're going to be tough, you know. I've met people who take an absolute abundance of illicit substances, who smoke all day, drink all day, work hard on the field all day, and they're still stronger, tougher than a lot of people who I've met who eat well, but who isolate themselves inside a box all day, right? There's something hugely important to connecting with nature's recharges. And scientific research has finally caught up with this, you know. We're understanding more and more that vitamin D is absolutely crucial for health, for every aspect of health, whether it be immunity, functioning of the brain, level of energy, and we get that vitamin D through sunlight more than anything else. Also, when sunlight reaches your eyes, it stimulates serotonin, and serotonin is that happy, feel-good chemical, right? So this is where we have you may have heard of SAD, where seasonal affective disorder, where during the winter months in more northern climates, people become depressed and despondent and lacking energy, right? Because they are not getting enough sunlight coming in. So sunlight is hugely important for feeling energized. Also, connection with the earth. Now, whereas sunlight energizes us, the connection with the earth soothes us and replenishes us, right? It's a little bit like the sun is yang, it's that outward energy, and then the earth is yin, if you've heard of those terms. It's our soothing, replenishing energy, right? And research has shown that one of the most potent, and in fact free, sources of antioxidants in the world is the earth. And when our skin makes contact with the earth, with anything conductive, whether it's plants, whether it's bodies of water, like pools, the sea, rivers, anything like that, whether it's rocks, whether it's dirt, right? When our body makes contact with the earth, we discharge huge amounts of free radicals and we take up huge amounts of antioxidants. And it's been found to be very, very powerful, especially to reduce inflammation, to be in contact with the earth, okay? And lastly, fresh air. I talked earlier about the oxygenating and how important it is, and the way you breathe is crucial, but so is the quality of air that you breathe, right? For me, I notice immediately if I'm in a room with no circulation at all of air, that it starts to become stuffy, and my vitality and my energy goes down straight away. I remember having consults with people before where we did it in an office, and I said, I kind of tell that they weren't really with me anymore. And I'm like, how are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm really flagging, to be honest. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, I wonder if we need to leave it there, or do we just need to go outside? So I'm like, let's just go outside for a minute. Stop, take a couple of breaths of fresh air, straight away. Ah, yeah, okay, I'm alive, I'm awake again. It's that simple, right? So a lot of the time, those three basics are completely underestimated because, as I said, up until recently, we had no choice but to have fresh air. We had no choice but to contact the earth. and now we do. But we need to make that choice, okay? So my simple practical recommendations for you are this, right? Get at least 20 minutes of sunlight a day, okay? And by the way, I'm not saying you need to stare at the sun at zenith or anything, of course, but if you're just outside with some indirect sunlight or some morning or evening sunlight, don't necessarily wear sunglasses. It's good to get a little bit of not that strong sunlight in your eyes, but it's good for stimulating the serotonin as well, right? And get some on your skin. And of course, do it safely. But I'm sure you know how to do it safely, right? 40 minutes a day of contact with the earth, right? That would be really great. So if you live by the beach, actually go to the beach, right? If you've got a garden outside, you've got some grass out there, just sit out there for a little bit or stand out there for a little bit. Spend a little bit of time actually connecting, touching, especially bodies of water. You know, if you can go in the sea, if you can go in a river or anything like that, even just putting your feet in there, that's fantastic because it instantly connects you to that particular battery charge. It charges you with that yin energy, that cooling, calming, rejuvenating energy, okay? And lastly, my recommendation, at least 60 minutes of fresh air. And ideally, I'd recommend whenever you sleep, make sure to at least have the window open a little bit, okay? So I would recommend actually 24 hours of fresh air, but if that's just not possible, if you work somewhere where it's not available, if you live in Antarctica and having a window open isn't that easy, right? At least 60 minutes of fresh air. Hugely important for a high energy lifestyle. Now, law number 9 of a high energy lifestyle is to always be clearing waste, right? Now, what does this mean? It means that, especially again with our modern day environment, we have more waste building up on our body than ever before. And it becomes all the more important to make sure that that waste doesn't build up to the point where it starts drowning our cells and reducing our quality of life, right? One of the easiest ways to feel really stagnant, really stuck, really unclear is to have too much toxicity, right? Too much waste inside our system. Now, how does your body naturally get waste out? Well, it's basically got 4 different exit routes. Number 1 is through the lungs, okay? We've already talked about that. We've talked about making sure that you have, that you're breathing well, so you're expelling air properly, and making sure that you're breathing fresh air rather than stagnant air, so you're not just breathing in the same waste that you've just breathed out, right? Makes sense. Number 2 is the skin, okay? And the skin is probably the most overlooked organ of elimination, the most overlooked way of getting waste out. And the skin is actually the simplest way of getting waste out. So whereas every other organ, your waste needs to go through your lymph and then through your blood before it can go out. And when waste goes into your blood, it tends to make you feel bad. But if you can excrete waste through your skin, it can go straight from your lymph, which is like your body's sewage system, straight out of your body via the skin. It doesn't need to go through the blood, so it doesn't need to make you feel in any way bad on the way out. So that's why the skin is very important for excreting waste and hugely underemphasized in most cases. The third way of getting waste out of your body is via your bladder, right? And the easiest and most important way to make sure that you're getting enough waste out that way is to stay hydrated. We already talked about that before, right? If you are not drinking enough water, then you're not allowing your cells to move that waste. And if you're not drinking enough water, you're not allowing enough to go out via your bladder, right? And route number 4 is via your bowels, right? Via your large intestine. Now, of the 4 of those, the biggest organ of elimination, the organ where most waste actually goes out from, is the lungs. Not, as most people might think, the bowels. Actually, around 70% of the waste that goes out of your body goes out via your lungs, or at least should go out via your lungs, right? So it's hugely important. Yet another reason why it's hugely important to learn to breathe well and to breathe fresh air, like we focused on in this video. But the practical suggestion I'm going to give you here is for number 2, the skin, which is another 20% of our total waste elimination. And the reason why the skin is so important, I've already mentioned, is because it's not requiring you to have any toxicity make you feel bad in any way. And the easiest way to eliminate waste through your skin is to make yourself sweat, but especially make yourself sweat while you're being inactive, right? So while there's some benefit definitely to sweating while you are running or exercising, absolutely, the time when you really clear waste out is when you are sweating, when you are relaxing. And so the way that you would do that is to either do it while you're having a sauna, right? To go and have a sauna, or to have a steam, right? Often referred to as a Turkish bath as well, or to just do it while you're having a hot bath at home, right? So something where you get very hot and you make yourself sweat, and then of course you can just wash it off afterwards. That's a great way to get as much waste out as possible while being the least uncomfortable as possible. And you can do that really quickly, and making a habit of doing that 3 times a week, maybe even if you're very committed, 4 or 5 times a week, is a great way of clearing out waste. However, when you do it, you do just need to be aware to replenish what you're sweating out, right? Because as well as sweating out waste, you're going to be sweating out some water, and you're going to be sweating out electrolytes. And so you need to make sure that you replenish those, right? I like to use the sauna, and every time I go in there, I make sure I bring a bottle of water, and I make sure that I put some Rehydrate, for instance, in there. It's like a little mineral formula, contains all your electrolytes. And so I make sure that I'm just replenishing that. And then I don't feel in any way drained by going to the sauna. I just feel invigorated for getting all of that waste out. Now, up until now, laws 1 to 9 are just essential. Like, you always need to be doing these things. You always need to be getting more minerals. You always need to be focusing on results. You always need to be clearing out waste from your body. There's no getting around any of those. The last 3 laws are kind of a little bit more advanced, and they're not necessarily necessary to begin with, but they are excellent practice, and they are a great way to bring things to the next level. And depending on your situation, they may well be completely essential for you as well. So law number 10 is essential if you have high levels of tension in your body, or if you've been through the trauma that we talked about earlier. And law number 10 is to release tension from the body, okay? Now, there are a few different ways of doing this which I found to be very effective, and I'm just going to share one with you today. There is a great way to breathe where you actually not only release toxins and release waste, but you also release a lot of tension from the diaphragms and from the diaphragm and in fact all the muscles of your body. And I call it the rejuvenating breath. And I call it that because after you do it, you feel so rejuvenated, you feel so refreshed, it's amazing. Now, an interesting side effect of this little practice is that it's fantastic for clearing away any negative emotions, right? So if you have any feelings that are kind of stuck or that are threatening to overtake you and you don't know how to get rid of them and you don't know what to do with them and you don't want to act on them, right? Say you're feeling a surge of anger, but you don't want to start shouting at anyone. Or let's say that you feel a surge of anxiety, but you don't want to start panicking. What do you do about it, right? Well, the rejuvenating breath is a fantastic way of dealing with them. And I would challenge you to try it. And I would make this assertion, make this claim, and let you test it to see if it's true or not, which is this. No negative emotion will be able to survive 10 of these breaths done fully, right? Now, don't take my word for it. Try it. Next time you feel out of sorts in some ways, next time you feel like you're not feeling too great, try doing this breathing practice and see what happens, okay? So it's just like the present breath in terms of that you're still breathing from your belly, but the difference is this time you're going to count and you're going to hold your breath for longer and you're going to release your breath very slowly, okay? So you start off by just taking a breath in. I'll do it from the side so you can really see this. You start off by just taking a breath in quickly into the belly as you might normally, say for the count of 2, like 1, 2. And then you would hold it for the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you would breathe out slowly for the count of 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Squeezing out every last bit of breath. And only when you completely run out do you take a nice breath in again. And you repeat, okay? So I want you to do it along with me this time, okay? So just start with your breath out. Just push your breath out and then take a nice deep breath in. Hold it. And then breathe out slowly. And then repeat. And breathe out slowly. I can feel that immediately. It already relaxes me. It's fantastic. I really highly encourage you to try that one, especially if you have any issues of stress, anxiety, tension, double especially if you've had any kind of trauma. It's fantastically beneficial. And the longer you do it for, the more you do it for, the more powerful you'll find it. So starting off by just doing 10 breaths in a row is really awesome. But especially if you do have a lot of chronic tension stuck inside you, it can sometimes require more than that. So generally, the more you do, the more effective it is. And the more often you do it, the more effective it is. So if you were to commit to, for instance, doing 5 minutes a day of that breath once a day, say first thing in the morning before a meal, or last thing at night before sleep, that would be amazing. If you were to commit to doing 10 minutes, that would be even better. If you were to commit to doing 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening, that would be better still. You probably see where I'm going with this, right? The more you do of this, the more profoundly powerful it is. And it's cumulative. You might notice it has fantastic results immediately, and you might notice that it takes a little while. But there is always a point you get to eventually where it just completely transforms you, and you just relax. I've worked with a lot of people with a lot of different issues, and for some people it works immediately and they feel fantastic. For some people it's taken, to be honest, a couple of months of practice. That's the longest it's ever taken, 2 months. But in each case, it's taken that person from feeling like, you know, life is boring or worthless or an endless stress to feeling incredible and like life is incredible, like they are incredible. So I highly encourage practicing that breath, the rejuvenating breath, to begin the process of releasing chronic tension from you. Okay, law number 11, okay? 11, for a sustainably high energy lifestyle. And sustainable is really the issue here, okay? With blood sugar imbalance, what tends to happen is that 1 minute your energy is up and the next minute your energy is down. Or maybe it's not your energy, maybe it's your mood. 1 minute your mood is good and the next minute your mood is bad. When your blood sugar gets low, either you tend to feel faint and weak and tired, or maybe you feel aggravated and angry and on edge or anxious, right? Either way, that's a sign that you're not centered, and that often correlates and corresponds to your blood sugar being low. So law number 11 is all about keeping your blood sugar balanced. Now, the most important things for blood sugar balance, we've actually already covered under a different guise, which is to hydrate first thing in the morning, right? That's hugely important. To be mineralized, hugely important, right? To be oxygenated is hugely important. All these things are crucial for blood sugar balance. But I'll add one more practical tip in there for you as well. And that's to eat breakfast within an hour of waking up. Now, like I said, you want to have the water before you eat, right? But you also don't want to leave it too long to eat. A lot of the time, maybe you can relate to this, you know, when you wake up, as soon as you wake up, you've got all these things to do and you're stressed and you're busy and maybe you've got to feed the kids and you've got to feed the family, you've got to get to work and da-da-da. And then by the time you think about eating, it's like hours and hours later. And the only reason you think of eating is because your energy has crashed. Well, the challenge is this. By the time your energy crashes, often it's too late to bring your blood sugar back into balance. Sure, when your energy has crashed, you can spike it again by having something sugary, or by taking a stimulant, or by creating some urgency within yourself to create stress within yourself. But with all of these tactics, what will happen is it will crash down even more. And that's basically going to be a day, up and down, up and down, up and down. So it's important not to let that happen. And it's important to stop that happening in the first place. And we do that by keeping our blood sugar balanced all along, by eating a meal early in the day, right? It doesn't have to be a big meal, can be small, depending on what your appetite is like. And it's really important what you have in there as well, okay? You want to have some protein, some fat, and no very high glycemic carbs, right? Which basically translates to nothing sweet and nothing starchy, okay? Nothing excessively starchy. So, as an example, what a lot of people have, for instance, like for me, what did I used to have? First thing in the morning, I would have a coffee with sugar, and then I would have some sugary cereal, right? That's the worst thing you can do, because immediately that's spiking your blood sugar going up, and then that just makes it crash. Or maybe toast. Sometimes I'd have like toast and honey or toast and jam. Again, that's like sugar with sugar with sugar. That's not serving you. In order to have a blood sugar balance, you need to stimulate a hormone called glycogen. And that's actually stimulated by protein. So even though it may not be super healthy, the more traditional breakfast of, say, bacon and eggs would be better for you than having something like a sugary cereal, because at least, while it's not good for you, it is keeping your energy and your blood sugar balanced, right? Okay, and here's the last law. This is law number 12. And this is actually the thing that most people focus on when they think about getting more energy and they think about getting more health. And yes, it is very important, but it's not the right place to start, okay? Everything which I've already shared with you is the right place to start. And if you're already doing all that stuff, then it's time to focus on law number 12. And law number 12 is to keep poisons out, okay? And you really want to do that as much as possible. Now, I could spend the next 5 hours telling you about all the different things that are potentially bad for you, and I'm sure you've had people do that to you before, but I know that doesn't really serve you, right? Because whatever we focus on magnifies. And so if I help you now to focus on all the things that are bad for you, you're just probably going to want those things, at least the things that you like out of that list, right? Like for me, it was like pizza, I love that, and coffee, and to be honest, smoking. I love to smoke cigarettes, you know? So people could tell me all day, don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke, and all I'd hear is smoke, 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 and I'd want it more and more, right? So that doesn't serve you. So I'm not going to do that with you here. The only practical recommendation I'm going to make with keeping poisons out is once you start acting on the other 11 laws here, you're going to notice that you feel better and better. And then sometimes you're going to notice that your energy goes back down again. And it's going to be like, damn, what happened? I was feeling so good. Now my energy's crashed again. And then I want you to notice, right? To be aware, pay attention. What is the common denominator? What happened? Is it because you had some alcoholic drinks the night before? Is it because you had a cup of coffee? Is it because you spent 4 hours watching the news, right? Is it because you had an argument with someone? Is it because you were in a certain environment? Is it because you consumed something that may not be poison to someone else, but your body really doesn't get on with it, which is known as like a food intolerance? So for some people that might be gluten, for instance, like wheat, or for some people that may be sugar, or for some people it may be soya, right? So, or soy for our American friends. So just observe, right? Become like a detective, not in terms of here's a big list of things I can't have, but I want them, and now I'm in conflict about it. That doesn't serve you, but more like, hey, I'm going to do all this stuff to get my energy high, and my God, it's working, and I feel amazing. How fantastic. And then, oh, something seems to have kind of spoiled it. What's happened? Try and work out what that is, and then just do an experiment. Cut that out of your life. Commit to cutting out of your life just for a week, okay? Just for 7 days, just to see what happens, and see what a difference it makes. And then once you've gone for 7 days about it, add it back in again, right? So it's not like, I can never have. It's just, I'm going to try. I'm going to see what happens. So you just see what happens, and then reintroduce it and see how you feel. Now, I remember when I first did this with coffee, right? I loved coffee. You may think I've really got something against coffee. I haven't, right? There are certain kind of types that it's okay for, and they're not addicted with it, and they just have it occasionally, just have a reasonable amount, and it's fine, right? But I personally had this with coffee. I would have it all day, like many, many cups a day for years, right? And when I stopped, it was difficult, but it was okay, right? And to be honest, I didn't feel that much better when I didn't have it. I felt a bit better. I felt a little bit more even, a little bit less anxious. And then after 7 days, I tried reintroducing it again. Boy, it felt like, I can't even describe it. It felt like, I've never done crack cocaine, but I imagine that would be what it was like. It was like, bloody hell, my heart was racing. I was like, I was like super hyped up, and I was like, wow, this is what it actually does to my body when my body doesn't have the tolerance, right? And same with a lot of other things. Same with wheat, same with sugar, same with soya, right? These are things that we may not notice are causing us any damage because we just have them all the time. But if you stop having it and reintroduce it, you may notice like, wow, this is really spoiling my quality of life. And then it's basically just a choice. Like, do I want to have awesome high levels of energy and be the best person I can be? Or do I want to indulge in something that I know is poisoning me? And then it's really just up to you. It's your choice. Now, I really hope that that served you. That's the 12 laws of high energy living. It was my absolute pleasure to share those with you. And just remember, if you're unclear about anything, you can obviously watch the video again, but there's also the printout underneath where you've got it all written down for you in black and white, at least, you know, a brief summation of each thing, so you can kind of tick, go through each one and see how you're doing with them. And my suggestion is, if you're anywhere near to feeling overwhelmed with all this, don't try and do it all at once. Just try and add it in one new thing at a time. And those laws are presented in that reason in that order for a reason. Okay, so just go through one at a time, starting off with presence and going all the way to law 12, keeping poisons out right at the end, and just do the practice and see what actually happens, and you'll be amazed at how much better you feel. Now, with all of this, we talked about the importance of clarifying what you want, right? And focusing on what you want, not on what you don't want or everything you have to do. But there's something else which is really crucial for success, okay? We're going to talk about it more in the next video. In the next video, I'm going to talk about, you know, the next bit, which is absolutely crucial, of course, which is how to get yourself to actually do all this stuff, right? Because you're probably thinking right now, okay, well, that's great, Owen, but that's a lot of stuff. Well, the truth is actually, it's not that much stuff, right? It's just simple adjustments to lifestyle which will completely transform the quality of your life. However, I know that doing anything new is a challenge. And I know that doing anything new, especially if you're already feeling depleted, is even more of a challenge, right? And I know that a lot of the time we have that kind of conflict inside ourselves. We have one part, right? The front part of your brain that knows that what I'm saying makes sense, right? And that knows that it would be a good idea. I mean, a lot of it's common sense, right? Get a bit of fresh air, drink some water, focus on what you want, not on what you don't want, be aware of the world around you. I don't think anyone could argue with most of this stuff, right? It makes sense, but how do we make it common practice? We do it through really harmonizing the different parts of us, right? Because you may have found that up until now, there's one part of you, right, that says, yes, it would be a good idea to do some exercise. I'm going to do it. But then you don't do it. So what's happened, right? Now, it's very easy when you do that to start punishing yourself, like, oh, I'm so useless, I'm no good, I'm undisciplined, I'm lazy, right? It's very easy to make excuses. It's very easy to distract yourself. It's very easy to give up. But I don't want you to do any of that stuff, right? I want you to find the resolution. I want you to find, like I did and like so many of my clients have, how to get yourself to do those things which you know are in your best interest, both immediately and long term, to resolve that conflict inside you between what you should do and what you want to do, right? To actually make them the same so that you want to do what's best, right? Because you want to. And so we're going to go through that in the next video. But as a preparation for that, I want to focus on the next part of you creating your vision of what you want to achieve. So in the end of the last video, video 1, I asked you to clarify what a high energy life is to you, right? Now, what I want you to do this time as a way of really engaging with the process and maximizing your chance of getting results, I want you to answer the next question, which is why, okay? Why is it so important for you to live a life of consistently high energy and low stress? Why is it so important for you to live up to your full potential, to be the best you can be? Why is that something you're committed to? Why is that important to you? And let me give you a clue. All the reasons that work are going to be reasons that are emotional, okay? Going back to law 3. And it's going to be things that you care about, okay? It may be positive feelings, or you know what? It could be so-called negative feelings, right? I wanted to do that because I would hate to reach my deathbed and feel like I'd wasted my life. That's a reason, right? As much as, you know, I would love to be able to be full of energy and play with my grandchildren, okay? Or I would love to do what I'm meant to do on this earth, okay? Or because I want to feel joy every day, because I want to be alive, because I want to be passionate, because I want to create, because I want to really connect with people, because I want to feel like I actually matter, because I want to feel like I really lived my life, okay? I don't know what it is for you. Whatever it is, I would love to find out. So I would love it if you would share underneath in the comments and question section, I am committed to living a high energy life because, right? And just fill it out, whatever is true for you. And again, there's something about making that public declaration, which is really powerful, which tells you, you know, this is real. I'm going to make this happen. This is truth. This is not just more thoughts in my head that I forget straight away. There's something about self-expression, and when you do it publicly, which tells that other part of you that sometimes resists and isn't cooperative, that you mean business this time. So that's what I want you to do, okay? Share your declaration. I am committed to living a high energy life because, write it down underneath, and I look forward to seeing you with the next video where I'm going to show you exactly how to overcome that resistance and get yourself to do those things which are in your best interest. And lastly, I just want to honor and acknowledge and appreciate you for investing your time and investing your energy with me to get that high level of energy, to become the best person you can be, to create that dream life. You know, so many of us, we get caught up in distraction, we get caught up in urgencies and things that don't really matter. The fact that you're still here with me tells me something about you. Tells me that you're a special person, right? That you're someone who really wants to make a difference in the world. That you're someone who really cares about being the best you can be. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I know it's precious. And I really look forward to sharing the next part of the training with you. But for now, what I'd like you to do is to, as I say, if you have any questions, comments, of course, leave them below. And to write your declaration and share it with the world, because it will make a difference to do so.